Best friends cheating with her husband and her punishment? Utter mayhem reigned everywhere. Davy Sloane eyed the damage with an icy stare. What did it matter to her now? Straightening up, she wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth with the back of her palm, stepping over the defeated body that still lay on the wet floor amidst the broken glass and broken furniture. Making a feeble attempt to adjust her tattered clothes and flipping her mussed blue-black hair out of her face, she strode toward the bar on one broken heel, with an air of importance. "Davy, what's gotten into you?" the man to her left asked, taking a step back. She gave him a murderous look. Honey," the other voice continued timidly. "I think Sam's hurt." It was true. Samara Gray was lying flat, bleeding and whimpering in the center of the bar floor. She didn't look like she was going to get up any time soon, which suited Davy just fine. "Forget that, fool," she growled, shifting her gaze again to the astonished man behind the bar. "Give me a drink." "Are you going to call the police, Charlie?" the drunken voice said in a slurred voice. "No," laughed Charlie Wells, pouring 3 fingers of his best Kentucky whiskey and sipping it to Davy. "That was a fight I'd pay good money to see." "Girl, you're really good. I didn't know you had it in you. Feeling better now?" Davy took the glass, staring at the amber liquid inside. Did she feel better? "Not yet," she said, taking a sip of the fiery liquid. "But I'm working on it." Grasping the torn shoulder strap that dangled from a large hole in her blouse, Davy pulled up the bra cup that threatened to expose too much of her breasts. The voices around her began to buzz, as they do when something spectacular happens. "I always thought she was such a sweet, shy little thing," one woman said. Davy knew what everyone had always thought of her. Sweet, shy, defenseless, a real wimp. But they had no idea about the emotions that were always simmering beneath the surface, or how she'd been taught her whole life to control them. Not once, since she was a very young child, had she ever given in to the rage she was capable of. She still hadn't. As good as it felt to smash this woman's nose, Davy still felt ashamed that she hadn't been able to control her rage. Her grandmother would be so disappointed in her. Bringing the glass to her lips again, she drank the remaining contents in a gulp before tossing it back on the bar. "Pour me another one." Still chuckling, Charlie poured a fair amount of bourbon into the glass. "Better go easy on that," he said. "You're not a drinker." "I'm thinking of taking it up as a hobby," she cut him off, grabbing the drink. Taking another sip, she let the whiskey linger in her mouth, killing the taste of blood before swallowing. The whiskey burned in her empty stomach, intensifying the fire of rage she felt in her chest. How had this mess started? Staring into her glass again, she remembered her years of marriage. Her grandmother had tried to warn her, but she just wouldn't listen. "Any man named Philander is a mess." My grandmother was right, she thought. Phil proved it within weeks of their wedding vows. That's when she'd found out about his first affair. Honestly, it had been a one-night stand, but that reality only made the event even more painful. He had gone and made love to some woman simply because he could. There was no emotion behind it, just lust for a body he'd met in passing. There were others, too. "Oh," he'd promised, after she'd found out about the first one, that he'd never do it again. But she'd always known when he'd made love to some cheating woman. She kept her shame to herself, never telling another living soul. It would be too painful to admit she'd made a mistake. It was that stubborn pride that made her hold her head high and turn a blind eye to Phil's infidelity, even when the whole town was talking about it. That is, until Samara. Sam had been her best friend since first grade. It was Sam who had held her hand through the long nights of mourning after Davy's parents died in the fire that burned their house to the ground. It was Sam with whom she had shared all the joys and sorrows in the girl's life. In some ways, Sam's betrayal was far worse than what Phil had done. Phil began to show little unconscious signs that he was fooling around again. It had only been 4 weeks when she realized he was cheating again, and this time it wasn't just a fling. At first she had tried to ignore it, hoping it would go away quickly like all the others. It soon became obvious that Phil was involved on some emotional level. When she finally tried to talk to him about it, he became belligerent, even violent. He accused her of being crazy, imagining things that weren't really happening. She tried again to ignore it, but the whispers of the people around her were unbearable. When Davy couldn't take it anymore, she started spying on him. She followed him when he left at night, showed up at his office unannounced, and checked his cell phone for suspicious numbers. He was good at covering his tracks. Her nerves were frayed, and she accepted her aunt's invitation to spend the weekend at the lake house with her family. As always, Samara had been invited too. It was the first time Sam had turned down the opportunity to lounge in the water and work on her tan in front of Davy's hot cousins. That should have been her first clue. Taking another sip from her glass, she glanced at her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Her mouth was swollen open from a good punch from Sam, and one side of her face showed bright red scratches. What was left of her blouse was unbuttoned, revealing the torn lace of her bra and Sam's nail marks. Her usually well-groomed hair was in such a mess that no amount of brushing could fix it. It fell in messy waves over her shoulders and down her back. Pulling a tangled lock of her own hair out of her blouse, Davy threw it to the floor in disgust. It was then that she noticed that the once white ankle-length skirt she had worn was torn from hem to waist along one thigh. She shrugged and returned to her drink. Movement in the mirror caught her attention. Someone was helping Sam up off the floor, setting her down in a chair. Draining her glass, Davy turned to face her former best friend. "You broke my nose, you fool!" shouted the woman from across the room. Davy smiled at her, the cold grimace contradicting the burning hatred that had settled in her soul. She wanted to break more than just Sam's nose. She'd gotten home earlier than she should have after a weekend at the lake. It had rained all night and was still raining this morning when she made the decision to come home. It was early afternoon when she pulled into the driveway to find Sam's car in her parking spot. Davy's blood froze the minute she saw it. Shock overwhelmed her senses, freezing her ass to the car seat and her fingers to the steering wheel. The world seemed to spin in slow motion when she finally managed to get out of the car. She didn't remember pondering any thoughts when she found herself tiptoeing across the yard to her bedroom window. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soft and wet, sucking the little heels of her shoes into the mud. The wet, mown grass clung to her ankles as she approached, soaking the hem of her skirt. This she remembered clearly. And the sight that awaited her on the other side of the glass was enough to send a shiver running through her stomach like an earthquake. With the window ajar, Davy heard Sam's screams. Her best friend was making love to her husband. From her vantage point, Davy could see everything from the look on her face as she begged for more, to her own husband's smirk. That realization alone was enough to bring anger to the surface, but she kept it in check. The scene in the bedroom was like a train wreck, mesmerizing in its horror. It enthralled her, making her stare at them. "My wife isn't worth a pimple on your ass, baby," Phil growled to Samara. "She's as funny in bed as a dead fish." Those words, that laughter, hurt as much as the betrayal. That's when the rage burst to the surface. That's when Davy let the anger spill out. She went to the garage behind the house, grabbed some paint from the shelf inside. Then she set to work on Sam's brand new silver Camaro. After spray painting the words cheater and stupid on the sides, hood, and windshield of the car, she used a hammer from Phil's cherished toolbox to smash the headlights and windows. After that, she got into her car and drove aimlessly for several hours, seething with the hot anger that was still bubbling inside her. She had always been a good girl, always doing what was expected of her. Even the clothes she wore were strict and proper. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she saw the beautiful white ribbon that held her raven wing-colored hair pulled back from her face. She grabbed it in disgust, ripping it off her head, letting her black hair spill over her shoulders and down her chest. The ribbon fell to the seat in a small pile of shimmering satin. Her wandering path led her to Charlie's bar, where she saw an angry Samara walking through the door. It was pure impulse that made Davy turn the wheel and slam on the brakes to drive sideways into the parking lot. She practically ripped the key out of the ignition, tossing them on the seat as she parked next to Samara's car. Standing outside her car, she internally raged as she looked up at the building. It was pure impulse that made her grab the ribbon from the seat again, using it to tie her long hair into a ponytail so it wouldn't get in the way. She then walked through the same entrance as Sam. Slamming the bar door behind her, she caught the attention of the small crowd inside. "You stupid fool!" screamed Sam when she saw Davy standing there, eyes glaring in her sinister rage. "You're going to pay for the damage you did to my car." "What damage, Samara?" Davy asked quietly, throwing back her ponytail and slowly approaching her enemy. "What price should we hang on the head of a duplicitous friend who would make love to my husband? What is the price for soiling the sheets of my bed with my man? How much would you pay to destroy a marriage?" Samara looked on with a flaming red face at the amused, curious looks of the subdued people around her. She began to barrel toward the door, sidestepping Davy, moving toward the middle of the room. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was at your house to talk to Phil because he's worried about you. That's all. He thinks you're losing your mind, and I'm starting to believe him." Undaunted, Davy continued her slow approach, keeping herself between her husband's cheating husband and the door. "That's a good try, Sam. Maybe next time you sleep with another man's husband, you'll remember to draw the curtains. I've seen it all, right down to how much you like another man's husband." Davy looked over her shoulder at the smirking bar patrons. "How many of you here didn't know that cheating woman likes other people's husbands?" she asked loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you didn't already know that, you will. From what I saw, my husband was having a hell of a good time." There was a collective gasp from the men and women surrounding the bar, followed by vulgar laughs and taunts at Sam. "How dare you!" Sam hissed unconvincingly. "Yeah, I should sue you for slander." "It's pretty hard to prove slander when the whole town knows I'm telling the truth, you cheater. They've been talking about it for weeks." "Silly me. I didn't want to believe it. I just thought they were all lying. I mean, after all, my best friend would never do anything like that to me. But then I saw it for myself. Stupid!" "Davy, stay away from me," Sam muttered, taking a step back. "Oh, no. You're going to take your punishment like a big girl, honey. I'm going to beat you to a bloody pulp." With those words, Davy lunged at her old friend, grabbing her by the front of her cropped t-shirt and connecting her right fist with Sam's eye. The woman screamed and jerked backward, crying out for help. No one in the bar moved. A few table occupants stood up to join the others at the bar to watch the spectacle. "No one's going to help you, Sam." Samara looked genuinely frightened. She looked around, but her only escape route was cut off by Davy. The humiliation of what was happening in front of the entire bar was more than she could bear. "Hey," she objected, her mouth twisting in a grin. "It's not my fault you can't keep your husband. Maybe if you stopped trying to be such a good girl all the time, he'd be home making love to you instead of me." "You got me, Sam. He's been fooling around all 3 years of our marriage. Imagine how lucky he must have been to finally nail you. But then, I guess it wasn't too hard for him, huh? After all, you've slept with half the husbands in the neighborhood," Davy parried, looking over her shoulder at the bar. "Do I have to start naming all the men in this room who've made love to you?" Sam shrank back. The men turned pale. A few wives hesitated. "Let's see some hands go up, guys. Just the married ones," Davy continued. "How many of you guys have slept with this cheating woman?" It was Sam's turn to pounce on her rival, and she did so with claws bared. She grabbed Davy by her long hair, ripping off the ribbon, and dragged her around until Davy punched her in the stomach. Sam fell, letting go of Davy's hair, grabbing her stomach and gulping for air with her mouth. Davy tore forward, landing in the middle of Sam's body as her shirt was pulled up around her waist, battering the woman with her fists. From far away, Davy could hear the cheers of the crowd. She knew she was creating a real show, but for the first time in her life, she didn't care. She punched Sam for every time someone took advantage of her good nature, for every time she believed in someone only to have her heart broken again. Every blow dealt to the fool was for the times Davy had reluctantly confirmed her friend's alibi, lied for her, and defended her just because that's what friends do. She stopped to catch her breath, fatigue wearing her down. It was then that Sam managed to hit Davy back with the edge of her palm. Davy was thrown backwards. She landed on her back, her skirt pulled up around her hips. The changeling was on top of her in a flash, claws digging into her face, tearing her hair and clothes. Davy felt no pain even as Sam grabbed her left breast, twisting it wildly. The crowd loved the maneuver, cheering and applauding the squealing Sam. Davy shooed her away as if she weighed nothing, leaping to her feet. She squinted her eyes, spitting blood out of her mouth as she looked at her former best friend. Sam jumped to her feet, putting the table between herself and Davy. She bounced back as if she'd been burned when Davy grabbed the table around the corner, tossing it aside. "Get back here, you fool!" Davy growled as the woman turned to run away. Grabbing a strand of blonde hair, Davy quickly wrapped it around her wrist, yanking Sam to take the full brunt of her fury in the form of a fist punch to the nose. Davy felt the crunch of bone before she even heard it, and it gave her a satisfying sense of retribution. Blood splattered on the floor, running down the front of her clothes. Sam's claws flashed again, causing Davy to loosen her grip on her wheat curls. With that done, she planted her foot on Sam's ass and kicked her, sending her flying face first. The chair in her path shattered, leaving the cheater face down on the beer-drenched floor. "Get up!" roared Davy, tossing aside the scattered chairs in her haste to grab Samara. Rising to her feet again, Sam reached for a glass on a nearby table, spilling its contents into Davy's face. A mug of beer was next. The burning liquid came into Davy's dark eyes, running down her face and onto her clothes. She had to smile when Sam screamed just before she threw the mug at her head. Davy deflected the heavy glass with her forearm as she heard the sound of glass hitting the floor. Sam pushed a chair at her, hitting her shins just below her knees. Davy didn't feel it. Picking up the chair, she threw it past Sam as the woman screamed again. "I'm done messing around," Davy growled, lunging at the woman she once thought of as her sister. She threw Sam across the table, watching with delighted joy as the cheating woman fell off the other side. Pushing the table out of the way, Davy landed on top of her. Clasping her hands together, she threw them over her shoulder and brought them down to slap Sam sideways across the face. That was the end of it for Sam. She grunted once, her eyelids drooping over her bloodshot eyes. Her body relaxed beneath Davy, unconscious and completely defenseless. For a moment, Davy had an almost irresistible urge to grab a shard of broken glass from the floor and use it to destroy what was left of Sam's face. She fought it, desperately gulping down the fuming air around her in an attempt to get the dark rage under control. Finally, she pulled away from the woman lying there. Samara moaned softly, the only sign that there was still life left in the fool. She was lying at Davy's feet, her dirty shorts unzipped at the fly and her ruined t-shirt pulled up around her neck. Now, as she stood at the bar, listening to the incessant whining of the woman who'd betrayed her, the one she'd called friend for so long, she wanted nothing more than to erase the last years of her life. She wanted to be done with this town and all its people. She wanted to be free. "Do you want more?" "What?" muttered Davy, immersed in her thoughts. "No, Charlie. Sorry about the mess." "Don't worry about it. We haven't had a fight like this here since the Las Vegas girls came to town." She heard the men around them chuckle, but the humor was lost on her. Sam was still sitting in the center of the room complaining about her face and threatening to sue. If the woman hoped to elicit sympathy, There were few in the bar who sympathized with her. Davy had to smile at that. Sam always liked being the center of attention. When the door opened, there was silence in the room. All heads turned to see the man enter, his eyes searching the semi-darkness of Davy's bar. His breath whistled through his teeth when he saw her condition. "Sean, oh, thank God!" Sam exclaimed. "Look what she did to me!" But Sean didn't see her. He headed straight for Davy, reaching out to touch her shoulder. "Phil called and said you've lost your mind, honey. Are you okay?" "Why are you here?" she asked. Good old Sean. He'd been a true friend over the years. He and Phil had hung out together since middle school, but when Davy and Phil got married, he turned out to be a better friend to Davy than his old buddy. "I saw your car in the parking lot. I've been looking for you ever since Phil called. Did you do that with Samara's Camaro?" "Yeah," she answered, her eyes glittering. She nodded her head toward the center of the room. "I also beat the crap out of that cheating bitch." "I can see that," he laughed, casting an oblique glance at a whimpering Sam. "So you finally found out, huh?" Throwing him a searing glare, she gestured for Charlie to pour another drink. "So I'm the only one who's too dumb to see, huh?" "Yeah, I saw the two of them through the bedroom window making love." "Oh, I'm sorry, Dev. I was gonna tell you, but I wouldn't have listened," she finished for him. "I'd probably kick you out of my house with a kick in the ass." "Why did you put up with his behavior for so long?" "He's my husband," she replied simply, shrugging her shoulders. "You deserve better than that, Dev," he offered. Looking into his eyes, she saw the seriousness in his words, and maybe a little more. Was it regret she saw? Regret for what? "When I married him, I thought he was the best. I guess I'm just an idiot." "No, honey. You just didn't see his flaws. You saw what he didn't have," Sean said quietly, tucking a loose strand of her hair back. "He never deserved you. Why don't you let me take you home so you can clean yourself up?" She opened her mouth to speak, but the door opened again. This time it was Phil who crossed the threshold. The people around him froze, some with their drinks half raised to their faces. He looked very angry, stomping over to her and Sean, fixing his gaze on his friend as if the man was intruding. "Thanks for finding her," Phil snapped back. "You can go now." "I think Davy's tired of you," Sean said quietly. "You better get away from my wife, asshole. This is between her and me." Sean took a step forward, coming face to face with Davy's husband. The crowd was like a pack of hungry dogs waiting to be fed. "What am I? A piece of meat?" Davy shouted. "You two are nibbling on my bones like a pair of vultures. Sean, you're a nice guy, but I don't need you fighting my battles. Besides, Phil's right. This is between you and me." She stepped between the men, placing a bloody hand on her husband's shoulder. "Why, Phil? I could be loved by you too. Why don't you want me the way you want everyone else?" "Davy, I'll take you home. Now." "What were you thinking?" "No one's paying attention to me," Sam intervened from her chair in the center of the room. "I'm just sitting here, bleeding to death." Rolling her eyes, Davy made her way toward the battered woman, stopping a few paces away to smirk evilly when Samara flinched. Leaning over, Davy picked up her dirty, wet tape from the floor. She slowly walked backwards, taking Phil's hand to pull him away from the others. "I think we should talk in private, Phil. I want to get to the bottom of this case." He started to pull her towards the exit, but was stopped by a smirking Davy. "Here and now I want to do something naughty to you," she said, pulling him behind her into the men's room. Looking over her shoulder, she winked lewdly at Sean. He looked angry, his fists clenched, an expression of utter disgust frozen on his face. "I know what you think you saw, sweetheart," Phil began as she turned and pressed her fingers to his lips, gently reassuring him. "It's done. Let's just forget about it, honey," she said in a soft and husky voice. "I want to show you that I can do all the things these other women do for you. I want you to know that you don't have to go anywhere to get what you need." Stepping into the stall, She could see the shock on his face as she pulled him closer, wrapped her arms around his neck, and breathed in the scent of soap. At least he showered, she thought, running her lips along his chin. She ran the fingers of one hand down his chest and reached back with the other hand to lower the toilet lid. She lowered her ass, sitting down so that her face was level with his belt buckle. Licking her swollen lips, she looked up into his face, smiling in what she hoped was a seductive way. She had another thought in mind. It was only a few minutes after she had entered the tiny men's room with her husband, and Davy came out of there, alone. She giggled like a little girl, almost dancing as she looked back through the door she'd left open. The look on Phil's face made her wish she had a camera. "Where's Sean?" she asked, not addressing anyone in particular, looking into the faces of those sitting at the bar. "He muttered something about stupid women and went out the door," Charlie answered, pointing to the door. She heard loud laughter behind her. One of the regulars was laughing at the top of his lungs as he pointed to the men's room. He turned to her, wiping tears from his eyes. "I'll get it back for you," the man shouted cheerfully, turning to run out the door. Other customers gathered to see what had so amused Mike Tompkins. Soon the entire bar was rumbling with laughter, and soon Mike was back with Sean in tow. One look through the bathroom door, and Sean smirked, raising an eyebrow in her direction. "He thought I'd let him seduce me again," she shrugged. "He thought a quick shower would make him completely clean." With a smug smile, Sean looked at her messy hair ribbon, one end of which was tied around Phil's dignity. The other end was tied to the water pipe under the sink in such a way that Phil couldn't reach it without bending over and hurting himself even more. There wasn't enough room in the rope for him to reach the sink. Even if he could, there was no way he could untangle the knots in the wet fabric. She tied him up like a naughty dog. "Davy, what did you do?" he asked, still laughing at the turn of events. "I taught him a much-needed lesson." "Come back, honey," Phil whimpered, writhing in pain. "Let's just talk about this." "I'm done talking, you asshole. I'm done with you. You're filth and stink." "Davy, please," he pleaded, gripping the edges of the sink as the pain overwhelmed him. "Please?" "Please what, Philander? Please forgive you? Please let you go?" She laughed again before adding, "You better get out of this and go to the hospital if you don't want that thing to come off." Before he could respond, she turned away, taking Sean's hand. "You know, you were ready to fight one of your oldest friends over me. Why?" "Why?" he asked, running his fingers gently over her face. "Don't you still don't get it?" "Maybe I don't quite get it, but a woman likes to be told that, Sean." "Because you're you. Because ever since we were kids, I've been in love with you, waiting for you to notice. But then you married Phil. I wish that hadn't happened." His voice trailed off, his eyes searching hers for understanding. She answered him with a mischievous smile. "So, what were you saying about taking me home to get cleaned up? Will it be your house or mine?" "Mine, Bolly. I never want you to go back to his house." She looked over and saw that Phil was still moaning in pain, desperately trying to stay on his feet. "Honey," she called out to him, "don't wait for me. I won't be home. Ever." Taking Sean's hand, she walked with him toward the exit, shouting over her shoulder to Charlie to take care of her car. The bar owner just waved her off, carrying a large knife into the men's room and chuckling at the day's events. She winked at him and turned to Sean again, wondering how she'd managed not to see the love that shone in his eyes before. They walked out together towards the setting sun. The day may have been coming to an end, but to Davy it all seemed brand new, a new freedom and a new life. The end? Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!